I want to ask you a question. What would happen if I took this coin and I placed it in my hand? Now, it's not a trick question. It's nothing to baffle your mind or just a simple answer. What happens when the coin goes in the hand? Now, you're probably lucky enough to have object permanence being later in your development cycle, and you can probably assume what happens when a coin you can't see goes into a hand. And if you said it's still there, well, yeah, duh. Of course it's still there. There's no reason why it wouldn't be. Now, once again, do the exact same thing. You take the coin, you place it in the hand. Now, I'm asking the exact same question. What happens to the coin in the hand? Now, you already saw the answer, so you know the answer. You know it's still in the hand. But if you snap your fingers like this, the coin disappears. Now, if you're unclear what just happened or going, what? And I'm trying to rewind the video right now, just stick with me for 1 second. What might have happened is you experienced some form of cognitive dissonance. It can be explained by Pichat's theory of schema. Now, what you saw was a new stimulus being added to. In magic, we do these all the time. We live in this state of cognitive dissonance. This is how we get that amazement factor. Because you see something that doesn't make sense, you try to rationalize it, or you try to go, how did that happen? Or you have that moment of, whoa. Now, as a magician, we do the same thing. We try to get people in that mindset of, how the heck did you do that? Now, you are experiencing this disequilibrium. Your schemas and your mindset don't actually align with what you just saw. So you have a couple options what to do. First of all, you can try to accommodate. So you could say, well, maybe when people snap their fingers, the coins just disappear. It's just like a freak of nature, or coins just do that. And then you go, that doesn't really make sense with everything else I've seen. So start to assimilate. You go, well, maybe, maybe that something happened. Maybe he did something. Now, if you're a young kid, you might say, well, it's magic. That was real magic I saw before me. And it could be. It's not, but it totally could be. Um, but you might create a different schema in your mindset. This is creating a new system rather than accommodating your old one. The new system might be, well, magicians do sleight of hand, and magicians can do things that I think are impossible. Even though I don't know how they're done, I can rationalize he's a magician, he did this. Thus, you assimilate and create a new schema about magicians. And what I do becomes a lot less impressive to some, but maybe not to others. Third thing you do is reject it entirely. You could say, I didn't see that, or I'm going blind. Just try to keep everything in line to make everything okay. Now, I want to show you another trick. And again, it's okay to be amazed by this, even though you're assuming it's a magician. Figuring out how it's done creates this state of this cognitive dissonance of you know something to be true, but didn't happen. That coin, I clearly saw it go in the other hand. I clearly saw him point at the hand. Well, I dropped it out of frame for a second, so I might have dropped it. So I'll try it again. Again, you take the coin placed in the hand, you make it disappear right in front of everyone watching. Obviously, I'm keeping this hand shown, but I can show you that hand empty as well. Now, I want to show you another trick, and I want to explain to you the systems I'm using to create even more cognitive dissonance, thus trying to make you confused and confused to be amazed by magic. So what we have here, we have four, stand up for this, we have four separate and solid rings. You have 1, 2, 3, and we have 4. Now, I'm creating a schema right now. That's metal to metal. You're remembering in your mind that's metal. And metal, we know, doesn't go against each other. It clicks against. Now, if you get a tap like this, the rings link together just like so. Now, if I give the rings a wave, the rings can unlink just like this. Now, obviously, that's not possible, so maybe you didn't see it. Maybe you're denying this happened. So as you see it again, you may create a new schema of maybe those rings are special. Well, then he pulls out his two separate set of rings, give it a tap there, and the rings appear like that. Now, I'd hand these out to people. Like, I'd give people all four of them if I need to. You might be then thinking, hey there, Mr. Magician. Well, there's probably like some kind of gap or a groove. And I go, well, watch this. I let you examine this fully. I'd have it right here. You go tap, tap, and this ring's in the front, this ring's in the back. You'll see them linked together and keep their positions as they were. They've been all impressed by the rings at all. Now watch the bottom ring. You see it go? Well, I'll do it again. I'll do it again. Third time's probably the charm. So the rings linked together with one hand. By the way, it took me 8 months of my life to do, so please appreciate that. Now, obviously, the rings linked together is only part of the routine. You can also make the rings unlink, just like this. Thank you. Now, just like the rings, magicians create these moments where people have understandings of what they're seeing. Now, if I was just to do this in a an environment where you weren't expecting a magician or not knowing I was one, it might create some very interesting moments. And I want to talk about one of those from history, and then get back to this kind of schema situation. Um, I want to first bring up an experiment called Bartlett's War of the Ghosts. In it, he asked a whole bunch of British school children to recount a story about Native Americans hunting seals with war spirits. And as time went on, they began rationalizing the story of what they remembered, changing it over time. There's a link in the description to a much better explanation. But they were saying, no, they weren't hunting seals. Hunting seals doesn't make sense. They were going fishing. They weren't waging war with spirits. They were trying to get food. And as time went on, their pre existing notions came into play. Just like in that video, where also link below of the experiment with the laundry list, it shows that that preconditioning that people have can really influence people. Now, there's a way this can be used for ill. It's actually why we get a lot of UFOs. There's an experiment done where they showed people a UFO, a crashed hot air balloon. They said don't pay attention to it. They had some guys, park rangers, leading them away. Now, what happened later is people would show up pretending they're from the government, saying, "We heard you saw our UFO a month ago." Remember, it's been a month. They saw the experiment. They made to draw attention to it. And what changed is there was like flowers on the wooden post that no, those were alien symbols. Oh no, that wasn't a weather balloon. That was a flying saucer. A lot of people's memory can be adapted by the way you're questioning them. They can kind of create these false memories in their head for good or for ill. Now, going back to that little list of schema and how our mind deals with these moments of disequilibrium, there's a story about a magician from 1856 named Jean Robert Houdin. His name might sound familiar because Houdini took his name from Houdin. Houdini meaning he who is greater than Houdin. Houdin was a famous French magician. At the time, France was warring with Algeria, who was led by a medicine men tribe. It means they had a deep belief in magic and spiritualism. The French were very secular at the time. And Louis Napoleon, not Napoleon Bonaparte, said, "Go down into France, into Algeria, and prove to them French magic is more powerful than Algerian magic." And this is a true story. He went down with a box and he said, "I am a great French magician. I can lift this box easy. But you bring up your strongest warrior." And the strongest warrior walks up on stage and he says, "You try to lift the box." And he couldn't. And then he lifts the box again. He says, "Try it again." He touched the box. The Algerian warrior, picks it up, runs away. Then he goes, "Emile, come here." And his 8-year-old son walks on stage and picks up the box. Now, the chieftain of their tribe thought this was the most disrespectful thing he's seen and challenged Houdin to a gunfight at dawn. Houdin accepted. Now, Houdin got to provide the pistols, but they were both examined. These were back in the days of the flintlock, where you'd ramrod down a lead shot ball. He walks out eating an apple, kind of being cocky. "Are we going to fight? Are we going to shoot?" And the warrior says, "How dare you?" Picks the weapon he wants, loads it up, fires. Houdin moves his head back, and the bullet is lodged in his teeth. Houdin then takes the gun, fires at a fence, says, "I'll spare your life this time," and bleeds human blood. The way he did it was the box had electromagnets. He had another bullet lodged inside of the apple. Now, the guns were real. The bullets were made of wax, so they weren't going to fire. Furthermore, as the blood, he took a vial of his own blood and put it in a syringe to fire at a wall. This is the length magicians will go to create moments where you cannot rationalize what happened. It's where we get that amazement factor. The reason I tell you all this is this process used for a darker purpose. You could say he stopped a war. You could also say he advanced colonialism. Regardless, he was playing on their preconceived notions and understandings. When they saw the magician lift the box, they didn't believe it was a trick. They had no schema for a magician, but they had schema for sorcerers and medicine men. And they believed that he could, according to Houdin's words, destroy them with his mind. So these are examples of how this process can be used from the notions that we set up, from conversations we start as, this priming that goes on can really influence the way people think. Also, it's good as educators to kind of look at a situation, and it's important to phrase our conversations correctly. giving a student a phrase like, this was a lot better than this really bad thing, wasn't it? Well, that's already priming them to say what you want to say. We have to use this to kind of be objective in our approaches to education and kind of approaches to life. And as for how I did the ring thing, I can't remember.